Hi, welcome to the session. In the last session, we have discussed about something relating to custom fields, path settings, all that stuff in reference to the role of a business analyst, especially in connect to Salesforce administrative part. Because as you know, as a business analyst, whenever we work as a business analyst in real world, apart from understanding about requirements, requirement gathering, understanding about the kind of requirements what we have, how to create requirement specification documentations, how to write user stories, all that. Apart from that, whenever we are working on Salesforce environment, more of a administrative experience is what being a business analyst one must be good and familiar with. So Salesforce administration is what one has to learn. If you want to become a business analyst, of course, uh, even this is not only for a Salesforce PA. Of course, people who wants to learn a Salesforce administration, this is something essentially important. Now, coming to the session, what is that we have discussed in the prior session, as I told you, about the custom user. This is what generally we have created. We have selected all that is custom labels, all that we have selected. At the same time, when we talk about these environments here, there are different environments we have in reference to the deployments. At the same time, or for the logs and all everything will be there. At the same time, even if you want to change any kind of development centers and all everything, there is a development center. Enable development center has to be enabled here. If you are enabled at all, there is a package which will be there to ready to install. So based on that installation purposes, what is essentially required in reference to the development DevOps center operations, normally this has to be enabled. Because earlier, if you see, whenever we are working on application development, there are two environments. One is development environment, second is operations environment. Development environments means where development people will take care of all that. When it comes to operations environment, means all these deployments and all everything happens in that category. That's how the situation earlier. But nowadays, the situation has changed in such a way where both the development and as well as operations teams are working on the same platform. So this is what generally DevOps came into picture. That's what generally we call it as DevOps environment. So nowadays, environment, I can say development, DevOps is an environment. If you want to enable any kind of environment in reference to the DevOps and all, where we have to enable this, right? So we need to understand the kind of product terms and conditions and all. If everything was understood by us, we can enable it. So whenever we are enabling, the option is that we have to install some packages for it. But make sure people who is working on the development environment in the field of Salesforce by our team, they should have well awareness about the say DevOps environment and all everything for sure. Then only the settings and all everything are required. So this is subject to the usage. Okay, understood this. Subject to the usage, whether do we require to integrate this DevOps environment or not, everything is absolutely of our choice. Subject to the usage and all everything is what we have to do in reference to the development part of it. At the same time, even service setups, if you want to create any kind of service assistant setups and all everything, this will be taken. So where if you want to create any kind of service setups and all everything, wherein we need to clean up our customer profiles and all, based on that we can do. At the same time, authentications, multi-factor authentications assistance is also required. So because multi-factor authentications and all everything is required for us, because whatever the authentication process we have done so far and whatever the authentication process we have done so far, there were some multiple people required for an authentication, because administrative role will be played by an individual. Maybe there may be some other people in reference to the requirements what we have and all. Some other people will also be included in it else apart. This is where generally this setup is being used for, right? Whatever the setups and all everything is what we have to see. And whatever the rollout setups we need to prepare, what is that users to prepare this MA phase, right? So or if you want to create any kind of MA manages all that stuff, or if you want to create any kind of security Salesforce security related, all these things comes under this multi-factor authentication assistance. This is all which majorly useful for us to understand about the need, what exactly it was, as far as the MF implementation itself is concerned, wherein it will be provided a high-end understanding over the kind of Salesforce security, which is essentially important under this multi-factor authentication assistant on it. At the same time, if there is any kind of releases we are doing, right? So for example, if you want to create any kind of releases in the next coming months or something like all that stuff, So this is where generally this releases has to be planned. Means either, for example, reviews relating to the kind of work what we are performing and all, these releases can be seen. And if there is any kind of dues or overdues we have and all everything, you can see. If there is anything to be overdue or if there is anything of dues we have and all everything, those dues and all everything can be seen under the release updates, all that stuff. At the same time, Salesforce mobile applications means if you want to mobile enable any kind of mobile features and all, everything is required because lightning reports are needed because Salesforce lightning is something which is common in any of the Salesforce application development, whatever we do. So Salesforce lightning reports and all everything must be enabled. It is required. So especially in the field of Salesforce, it is needed. At the same time, these two are optional because this is the beta version which was released recently for about having some context experiences and reference to the organization level, followed by the new contacts, imports, all that. So anyway, it is getting a beta version. These two are the beta versions. Hence, I'm not enabling these two because beta version is still under the progress. So based on the corrections and all, full and final version will be released accordingly. This is what it is. Next, one more important is lightning usage. This is what I said, right? So if you want to use any kind of matrix and all that, wherein we have to use this matrix here, metrics will be used, right? So lightning experience is whatever the key metrics we have and all everything. So for that, make sure we need to create and run this Salesforce optimizer for sure. So unless until if you are not creating this Salesforce optimizers and all, you cannot see this whatever the metrics we require, right? So how this data looks like, what are the different data are available, all this can't be seen here, right? So because whatever the pages we have, right? So the kind of active licenses we have. At the same time, if you want to create any kind of metrics in reference to the Salesforce optimizers, all these things has to be used here. So this is where generally this lightning or Salesforce experiences and all everything is what generally we see. Next is Optimeter because the Salesforce optimizer is required, as I told you, because as far as lightning usage itself is concerned, this optimizers and all everything should also be used equally. Next, managing subscriptions, because if you want to manage any kind of subscriptions, all that, whatever the subscriptions we want to manage, because different subscriptions we have. So if you want to subscribe anything, wherein you can click on that. If there is any enability of the subscriptions and all everything, we have to contact because these are the something relating to the trial versions we are using. These are not completely an 100% available version. So that usually these services won't be available because subscriptions depends on the kind of Prime membership what we have. But whatever the tool we are using is something trial version of the tool which will be valid for 30 days. For the training purpose, this is sufficient for any learner. So we don't require any licensed versions or something because most of the services can be enabled. Most of the services we can use it. So we don't see any difficulty in doing it. This is what generally it was. At the same time, if you want to manage any kind of users and all, here you can see we need to create some permission setup groups, all that. So whatever the permission setup groups and all everything is what we have to do. Permission sets has to be created because different users will be there where we have to create permission sets and all that, right? So all permission sets has to be created. We need to select, right? So if you want to create any kind of new permission set, we have to create a new permission set here. For example, new permission set in reference to the label for configuration, for example. Okay. Let's description. Configuring application when it requires is what I have taken, right? So that is what generally we have taken here. Now, this is what we have taken. We make sure we need to see the licenses, right? So if you have user licenses, then only it is allowed. Otherwise, if you don't have any user licenses and all everything, this permission sets and all everything are not possible. So for example, Salesforce is the user license we have. If you are clicking on setting, automatically this permission settings and all everything will be created so that we can create permission settings, whatever we want. So permission setting in reference to the configuration I have created. So what is that we have to give? We need to give the licenses, right? Which license do we have, all that to set the permissions license and all. For example, assume that I have Salesforce permission license I have, or else if I have something like, because different permissions, it can be Salesforce, it can be Sales Console, it can be Salesforce, IQ inbox users, different user permissions we have. Depends on the kind of user permissions, what is that we have, all the here. So these configurations and all, everything can be done. Whenever you are clicking on save, automatically this permission settings and all, everything will be done accordingly. This is what generally this permission settings are all about. So based on that, you can see here, this is where generally all this information will be updated. If you are clicking on refresh, automatically whatever the permission settings we have done, everything will be updated here subsequently. Next is about profiles. For example, if you want to add any kind of profiles or if you want to create any kind of profiles, all that stuff, you can create. Right. So profile we have end user. Right. So profile name. For example, customer. Right. So this is what I've just created. Right. So profile. Yeah. Okay. So maximum numbers were added. So if you want, we can delete. Right. So we can delete some profile and we can do it. Yeah, end user is what I'm deleting. You can see end user, whatever the end user we have created, that was there. If you want, I can delete. Right, so you can delete. So that is what generally this deletion can be done because it is there already, end user, hence it is not taken. Right, so this is what it is. Next, if there is anything relating to public groups, right? So if you want to create any kind of public groups, or if you want to create any kind of groups, everything is separate. Right? So labels has to be created. Followed by this, we need to create all the public groups and all everything is there. So this is how generally this permissions, sets group, permission sets, profiles, public groups, all these things can be setting up by any business analyst wherever they are working on the Salesforce one. So this is not only for a Salesforce business analyst, even administrating people, whoever wants to acquire their career in reference to the Salesforce administration, for them also the same thing. Because Salesforce PA, apart from requirement gathering, they need to have experience on the Salesforce administrative part. If it is a profile, something relating to Salesforce admin, exclusive administrative activities they'll be learning, and they don't go with BA related stuff. Right? That's how generally the differences you see. So the remaining things that I'm going to discuss about this process automation, all that in the next session. Okay, see you.